Right, welcome back, guys. I hope you've had a fantastic Whitsun and enjoyed this amazing weather that we've got at the minute. This presentation just aims to kind of clarify where we're at and what we need to cover in the remaining 3 weeks that we have of this academic year. Okay, so this presentation is going to look at firstly the tic-tac-toe assignment, which was due in a submission on Sunday. So the deadline for that was on Sunday, so most of you have submitted that. Some feedback on your year 2 project proposals, which you submitted a few weeks ago, and what we're going to do with them, and then yeah, just a little bit of an overview as the focus of the next couple of weeks as well. Okay. So tic-tac-toe feedback, I've had a quick look at some of the submissions and the videos, and some of them are absolutely fantastic, and the tic-tac-toe games that you've created are kind of jaw-dropping, that, you know, some amazing functionality that you've included, and just the look and the presentation and the professional feel of the programs as well. So there's been some really fantastic work done. Just a couple of things to think about there. Just duration of video. So some of you look like you've made a really good game of tic-tac-toe, but I feel like you're not really showing me all of the functionality in your videos. In fact, I think one of the videos took 48 seconds in total. I think 2 different videos, 24 seconds each, which just whizzed through some of the, you know, just playing a single game of tic-tac-toe. But if you looked at the interface, there was a lot more functionality there that you could have demonstrated and showed that was working. So yeah, if you can rejig that and just, you know, go back to the videos that I've produced before half term that explained what I wanted you to do within the videos themselves, and the importance of narrating very clearly what's happening and what functionality has been demonstrated. Okay, the other key thing that you can do to help making sure, which will help make sure that your video is covering everything that you should, is go back to your client requirements that you've identified at the end of analysis, and that is a good checklist that you can use to then work your way through as you're showing your program and evidencing that each of those requirements has been achieved, or the extent to which the requirement has been achieved. Okay, so that's the first thing. In terms of documentation, again, I've had a quick look in documentation, and I mean, I've not really made the focus of this particular mini project on the documentation, just giving you a tiny flavour of the kind of things that you need to cover within it. But I did ask for two more things since we finished design stage, and that is the test plan, which should cover some validation testing for the number of games. So you identifying a rigorous test plan for that. And again, an evaluation which basically consists of RAG rating those client requirements. And again, if you need help understanding what you need to do there, go back to the videos that were on Teams before half term that explain what I want in those sections. So yeah, if you can make sure that that's fully complete, please, and also obviously that you've updated your appendix. Okay, one more thing that I'd like you to do though for tic-tac-toe. So there is one additional piece of work that needs to be done, and yeah, in hindsight, I should have included this as part of the initial evidence. But yeah, what I'd really like to see is a code walkthrough as well. Okay, so it's great to see the program running, but also, and this is really where the bulk of those marks will come in your project, is you actually have to evidence you know, the programming techniques that you've used as well. Okay, now if you remember, this is worth nearly 50% of your project marks in total. So to do this, then what I'd like you to do is use Screencast-O-Matic or whatever screen recorder you've used previously. Load up your programming code, and I want you to sort of pan across that code. Okay, just pausing along the way just to point out some of the programming techniques that you've used. Okay, so let me just grab a highlighter. So yeah, now if you remember, in terms of your actual construction, 50% of the marks at year 2 you could achieve just by using some of the skills that we've learnt at and covered in year 1. Okay, so the things that I'd like you to pick out, I don't want you to go through and pick out every single if statement, every single loop that you've used, but good things would be cover things, subroutines, so to kind of pick out the different subroutines within the program so that I can see how you've structured it. You could just give a very brief overview as to the purpose of each subroutine and what role it plays within the program. Okay. Other useful things to point out, the use of text files. So if you have got some permanent storage and you've got some reading and writing of data to text files, like for the leaderboard for example, then that would be worth notifying. Okay. Moving down to this bullet point here, so if we've got some parameter passing, or you've used some records, so the struct data type perhaps to manipulate data within your program, or you've got subroutines that call other subroutines, that would be really good again for you just to point out in the walkthrough. Okay, so if you slowly pan through the code that you've got and just pause along the way to point out subroutines and some of the things that I've just mentioned. Other skills that you might have demonstrated, now I'm actually going to show you what's on the Year 2 project list here, and if you remember these categories, so we've got category C skills that are worth pointing out. So if you've got arrays, so single dimension arrays in there, you could talk about those, and if you've got any algorithms that process the data within those arrays, then again they'd be also worth mentioning. Calculations, so any simple calculations that you've got, you could just highlight as you go through, totaling up the scores and so on, perhaps. Moving into category B, which again I think we'll have some skills in here. So you'll notice that actually text file sits under category B, and reading and writing data to those, the use of structs and records. And down at the bottom here, and this is what I'd be particularly interested in as well, perhaps, is the use of an OO object-oriented programming technique in your assignments. So where you have used that and different classes that maybe you've used to create this program, I'd be really interested to see that as well, so do point those out to me. Okay, and then from category A, I don't think yet there'll be too much on here that you can pick out, but it does help here to sort of cement that thing that you need to, that relationship that you need to be aware of when you're creating your programs, is how the skills that are defined by AQA and the evidence of those skills within your programming code can help you improve your overall mark. Okay, and you can begin to sort of touch on that process by working your way through your tic-tac-toe game and seeing what which of these skills have you utilized, and then highlighting them to me in your code walkthrough. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies what the code walkthrough is, and yeah, I'll talk about deadlines and so on towards the end of this presentation. Other things just to focus on this week, so I've had a look at your project proposals and I've given you some feedback on those proposals, and if I can just highlight where that feedback is, so just trying to find my cursor again. So over here you'll see that for the assignment you should have some statements, and that's my feedback relating to your project proposal. It will be just sort of covering some points that I'd like you to consider and think about, and then also respond to in an updated version of your proposal. So you can see in this particular example, actually the student has already responded to my feedback by adding the update and then answering some of the points and the questions that I raise in the feedback over here. Okay, so if you can do something similar to that, and it's really all about trying to clarify and make sure that you've got a suitable project for year 2, because it is going to be worth 20% of your overall qualification. Just some general feedback that we had. So the need for real client users, I found hard to kind of identify that in some proposals. So these projects, they must have someone that you can involve in the project to get feedback from, to get ideas from, in terms of what the program should do and how it should work and so on. Okay, that's really, really important. So can you please make sure that you go back to your proposals and identify who that person is, why you've chosen them to be the client, and what kind of role, what kind of feedback are they going to hopefully be able to supply to you during the course of this project. The other key consideration here when you're thinking about your client is making sure you've got access to them, making sure that as and when you need them for this project, you're going to be able to get that help from them. Okay, so really, really important that you identify that, because it is a requirement of the project that we do have some real human involvement in there. So that's the first thing that I've highlighted in a few proposals. The second thing is, and it's great to see the the wide range of proposals that some of you have, that you've come up with as a group. So I've got examples of programs which will be judging the quality of a portrait in an art context, for example, through to simulations of racing cars driving around tracks and trying to find the optimum speed. So that's fantastic. I really do want you to pick projects that you think you're going to be able to engage with. The but that is coming here is, are they realistic, and how much do you know already, and how much familiarity do you have with the tools that you're going to need to be able to actually produce and get those particular applications to work. Okay, so yes, be ambitious, but please try and convince me that this is a realistic idea, and that you have the skills necessary and ideas about how you're going to acquire those skills, if you don't have them yet, to actually be able to deliver the project. Okay, so yeah, I'm all for you doing something that is ambitious, that is something that you're going to enjoy, but it must be achievable. Okay. A few of the comments will be in there around just asking for a little bit more detail about what the actual program is going to do, how it might work, etc. What kind of skills you might be able to demonstrate that are going to sort of tick the box required for A-level complexity. Okay, so have a look at those comments, please, and respond to them. And the final thing is just clarifying, and some of you have already done this actually and had a really good kind of think about some of the additional tools, libraries, additional software that you're going to need to actually create your particular applications. That's great. Some of you it's less clear, and if you could sort of get back to me on that and sort of give me a little bit more information maybe about what you're going to be using to actually create the project, that would be good. Common things there, things like databases and whether or not you're going to use one or not, what you might use to create the database, etc. Would be good to see that you've clarified that as well. Just one point to bear in mind on this as well. We're quite limited in terms of the software that we can install on the college computers. So assuming that we do return to college in September, maybe, I don't know if that's optimistic at the moment, but we'll see, then you will be given plenty of lesson time to work on developing your application and developing your project, and obviously you're going to need to have access to the tools to build it. So not all of those tools I will be able to promise that we will be able to install on the college network. So it might be a case that you're required to bring a laptop into college with the software on so you can make progress on it. So it's just worth thinking about that, and whether if you are going to use something that we haven't got in college or works with Visual Studio, then you are going to need to make sure you can work on the project independently still. So it can be facilitated, but just be aware of that. Finally, the next 3 weeks, what we're going to do, well, tomorrow I'm going to get you up and running with the actual Year 2 project itself. So want to get to a point really by in 3 weeks time where you've done a little bit of investigation into this in the form of maybe an initial interview with your client, and beginning to actually thrash out the outline of some initial requirements. The whole point being really that I want you to be in a position where you can actually start to make progress on developing this actual project over the summer, and actually getting your teeth into doing some of the code and tackling maybe some of the hardest aspects of it. Okay, so that's one focus. Another focus is going to be on the database design theory and introduction to SQL code as well. So the programming language used to create and manipulate data in databases. So that's going to be a focus in terms of theory. And then in terms of skills, actually being able to sort of read and write data to a database and actually doing the programming of that and the implementation of that is also something that's good to begin to get some awareness of, and obviously hopefully will feature in many of your projects as well, and is a good way of accessing some of those programming skills that I've already mentioned. Okay, so that's everything from me. Just a reminder that work due this week includes the submission of a code walkthrough for your tic-tac-toe project, and finally an updated project proposal where you've responded to the questions and points that I've raised in the feedback. Okay, see you tomorrow, guys. Bye.